if he feels the regime is on the brink and the survival of the regime is at stake, then anything is possible. Then he is known to take steps back and essentially sort of, avoid the sort of existential fights that could cost him more than he would bargain for.
Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has announced 5 days of mourning following the death of the country's president, Ibrahim Raisi. Mr. Raisi was killed in a helicopter crash in a mountainous area of northwestern Iran, along with his foreign minister. State media have confirmed the news of their deaths after the helicopter they were in came down in thick fog. Well, Alex Vatanka is the founding director of the Iran program at the Middle East Institute in Washington, also author of The Battle of the Ayatollahs in Iran, the United States foreign policy and political rivalry since 1979. Good evening to you, Alex.
Good evening to you. How are you?
Very well. Really good to have you with us tonight. First of all, there does seem to be a general acceptance that this actually was simply a helicopter crash, an accident in thick fog.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything contrary to that. I mean, in fact, we've had the former Iranian foreign minister, Javad Zarif, come out and publicly kind of blame sanctions on Iran by the United States and Iran's inability to buy parts to run these helicopters and aircraft the way they should be run. So, I'm sure there'll be plenty of speculation about the many adversaries that President Raisi had inside of Iran and around the world, who people like to point their finger at. But unless we have some evidence to substantiate it, that is, really, frankly, at this point, of not much use to us.
And what then do you think is the significance of Raisi's death, along with the foreign minister? I mean, he's been in that post for many years, seen as pretty loyal to the supreme leader.
Maybe I should just start off by quoting the Supreme Leader himself, who said yesterday that the possibility of Raisi dying, this was before we knew he had died, he said it won't matter in the big scheme of things, that the regime will continue, that there are plenty of folks in the ranks of the regime that will come in and do what needs to be done. So in that sense, I happen to agree with Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Ibrahim Raisi wasn't someone that we can call a pillar of the Islamic Republic. He only became president because Ali Khamenei wanted him to become president. In fact, did a lot of engineering to make that happen back in 2021. So yes, Raisi is gone. Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian also gone. Will Iran's policies in the region change? I wouldn't bet on it. The individual that has essentially been the captain of this regime ship since 1989, his name is Ali Khamenei. He's the supreme leader. He's 85, but there's no sign that he's going to be leaving this world anytime soon. So for now, the policies that he's been supporting will, I'm assuming, continue to be supported because he will stay in power regardless of the fact that Raisi is now dead.
Yeah, the Iranian government has said it's going to continue to operate without disruption. Of course, we've seen Iran only recently launched that all-out attack on Israel, which prompted such a strong reaction. Presumably, the supreme leader will want to replace Raisi with somebody who's going to continue to carry out his bidding. I mean, will it have any effect on Iran's wider and destabilizing activities across the Middle East?
Unfortunately, I don't think so. You would hope that this would be a moment for the Iranian regime, the top leadership, most notably the two key centers of power in this system. That's the office of the supreme leader, with Ali Khamenei as the head there, and then the generals in the Revolutionary Guards, that they would sort of come together at some point and have a nice conversation and say, look, this just can't go on. We have so much pressure at home. Our own people, the Iranian public, essentially hates this regime by all the indicators out there. And obviously what Iran is doing in the region is high risk. And frankly, it's not even clear why they're doing this. I mean, you mentioned the tensions between Iran and Israel over the course of the month of April, it's an ideological fight that Iran is fighting there. There's very little for Iranian national interest in engaging the Israelis and in bringing the country to the brink of war. So this could have been a moment for some soul searching on the part of the Iranian regime. But as I said, unfortunately, I don't think Ali Khamenei is the man who would do that kind of introspection and soul searching. He's very much set in his ways. But I have to say this final thing. If he feels the regime is on the brink and the survival of the regime is at stake, then anything is possible. Then he is known to take steps back and essentially sort of, avoid the sort of existential fights that could cost him more than he would bargain for.
Because, of course, well, the other aspect of this that we have seen is that during Raisi's time in power, there were these brutal suppression of the demonstrations by many Iranian women seeking greater freedoms. That presumably is also something that is going to simply continue.
To be honest, we can sit and blame the violence, the horrible treatment of the Iranian public over the last few years following the death of Mahsa Amini, and even before, on the person of Ibrahim Raisi. But really, that's to put the blame at the wrong door. Ibrahim Raisi didn't essentially come up with that sort of a policy of repression. He just implemented the policies, the wishes of those people who essentially put him in the presidential palace. And that was the life story, the political life story of the man Ibrahim Raisi. Wasn't a visionary, didn't necessarily have a base politically or in Iranian society, but was somebody that was trusted, someone you could give a job to and expect him to deliver. He would do that. But the real repression, the real root causes, when Hassan Rouhani was the president between 2013 to 2021, there was plenty of repression going on in Iran then too, because he as president, even though he's moderate, he didn't have that kind of clout either. It's the supreme leader, it's the Revolutionary Guards, it's the so-called Iranian deep state. They are the real sort of villains in all of this, if you will, and they're still very much in power in Tehran today.
And what is the process for replacing Raisi? Will it simply be cooked up behind closed doors and we'll get some sort of announcement at some stage?
Well, it's a little bit more elaborate in this Islamic Republic. It's not going to be as black and white in the sense of saying, well, this individual is going to be your next president, accept him. The regime actually takes the effort of having a process, an election process. They've announced today that that election will happen by 28th of June. There'll be a number of candidates that the regime will approve of. I should say the person of Ali Khamenei would approve of. And one of those individuals will replace Raisi and be there for the next four years. But these elections are hugely regulated. They don't reflect the wishes of the Iranian people. And, elections in Iran in recent years have come to a point that they just announced the last set of elections for the city of Tehran, where I believe 7% of people bothered to come out and vote. So this is not in a society where people's voices, political hopes are expressed through the ballot box. The Iranian people know better, and that's why they've given up all hope for gradual change in this regime.
So you don't think that these elections might be an occasion on which we would see perhaps a resurgence of the protests, perhaps other Iranian citizens objecting, of course, not just to the restrictions on their lives, but the huge economic problems that they're facing as a result of sanctions? We're unlikely to see much of a manifestation of that.
It could be that if the regime is blatantly, I say blatantly, but that's exactly what they've always done. They've sort of, identified who they want to run, and you can't question the decision. And let me just point out the last three Iranian presidents, including Hassan Rouhani, before him Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, and before him the now deceased Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani. These people all served for 8 years in the presidential palace, and yet when they try to come back, they're all told, "No, thank you, you're not coming back in." So, it can happen to the most senior officials that are finding out they will be barred, not allowed to run for elections. There's obviously a huge source of frustration in Iranian society. Will it bring Iranians out to the street? It could do, but it could also be something very different. It could be another young Iranian man or woman beaten up by the security forces that will do that. It could be the price of chicken going up next week that could bring people out. I mean, it could be a whole host of things, because the reality is this Iranian society is so angry about so many different things that essentially it's hard to predict when they will come out next time. But one thing is for sure, they do come out because this is not a regime that represents them.
Alex Vatanka, founding director of the Iran program at the Middle East Institute in Washington. Really good to have your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us.
Having me, a pleasure.